Well, Vincent, we've been talking a little bit about uh, the historicity of the AME Church,
Yeah.
its response to racism with Richard Allen, the role the AME Church has played.
Yeah.
Talked a little bit about the black community. Now, I want to talk a little bit about social political philosophy, economic philosophy. I know we had a loving debate over Google Hangouts,
Sure.
and I remember you were arguing really for a third way. You're I think what I heard from you, and I want to make sure, because whenever I debate, I want to make sure I understand my opponent's argument, right?
Yeah.
And what I heard was that we need a third way,
Yeah.
right? We need something that doesn't attach itself to Democrat or Republican Party.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. I mean, right now, as it stands, we're just giving kind of these two options, Democrat or Republican Party. And for me, as a Christian, there's some to be like for both. There's some that I don't like for both, right? And I think more than anything for this go around has been kind of the individuals of those parties, just really wanting and wishing that there was another option, because I have some questions and some concerns about both candidates, and I think for me, they're valid concerns and those issues that they present themselves, and so sometimes, and what I'm really pressing us towards, and thinking about, even in in our Christian formation, is do we just relegate our options to the ones in which that have been decided for us by the world, right?
Yeah, the powers to be.
By the powers to be. But for us as Christians, we recognize that the world cannot speak a language that speaks to us,
Sure.
because it's the world.
Yeah.
And that's where kind of the idea of, is there another option that for us as Christians that we can consider? And you and I in that Google Hangout, we're just kind of going through those different options, right? The different options would be, obviously, if there was another candidate, right?
Yeah.
That'd be another option. But another option would be, not voting at all, right? Or another option would be, which of the two do you feel probably is most aligned with our Christian principles? So those are those options. I'm still in that kind of undecided state,
Sure.
place, trying to figure out,
Well,
which way
yeah,
we go.
I've argued for a third party that really has an affinity towards Christian social ethics, right?
Right.
We don't want to legislate church sacraments. We don't
Right.
want to have a denominational church state,
No,
right?
no,
That's
no.
exactly what the framers were talking about when they talk about the separation of church and state.
Right.
They weren't saying keep religious morality or religious social ethics out of policy, because obviously they had that. I mean,
Right.
the first act of Congress was to ban the slave trade, and it was because of the influence of Christian theology, especially from the abolitionist
Right.
evangelical Quaker movement.
Yeah.
So that would be absurd. President Obama and many presidents quote the Golden Rule,
Yeah.
and as a precedent for why they believe in certain things. But then the issue would be that Christians are divided about how they interpret the best models of bringing about economic prosperity, or strengthening the family, or developing the educational culture of our youth, and
Right.
the skill sets of adults. So a lot of times there's debate about method
Right.
and processes.
Right.
So I could see that party being divided
Yeah.
eventually, because people also interpret scripture differently. So I get that third party argument,
Yeah.
and I agree with it to some degree, but I recognize that in itself would then probably have different schisms and division.
Right.
But my
Right.
but
Sure.
my issue is this with your reasoning. This is what we have right now,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Philosophically, I agree. We need to be looking to a third way.
Correct.
And the question for me, and that I'm raising to my Christian Black Democrat, Latino Democrat, white Democrats who have a Judeo-Christian framework, is which one of the parties is the lesser of two evils?
Okay.
Which parties have better platform issues historically,
Right.
and also in the present.
Right.
And my argument is that the Republican Party, as an independent kingdom activist, as I'm looking and I'm judging the basketball game, right, and I'm judging the boxers to see who I'm going to give more points to, right, when this thing ends with a draw. I mean, when it ends without a knockout,
Yeah.
who wins?
Right.
I'm seeing that the Republicans, just by nature, were really organized to undo slavery. Just, I mean, even their roots are rooted in, you know, you got men like Frederick Douglass who said that they would die Republican, like, you know, because for them this was the party that went to war for slavery. And when I study the facts, I don't see a time, because many Democrats argue that during the 60s there was a switch.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look on the record, okay, Mr. Thurman, okay, Senator Thurman, there was about 3 senators that switched, and they mainly switched because they realized that they were on the wrong side of history.
Mm.
James Brown said that Senator Thurman was his mentor, and this was the guy pre-Civil Rights Act was arguing for segregation. So there was a heart change, just like many people have experienced heart change with the same-sex marriage issue. You got Republicans who are leaning towards that side, and then you got Democrats who came to the Republican Party because they felt like, you know, people switch because of moral reasons. So, so that's my argument to you, is that I don't see a time that Republicans, based on policy, have become bad for blacks. I see that Democrats have changed their method and are continuing to destroy the black community, through abortion, black and brown genocide. 70% of all abortions is on black and Hispanics. The predominant areas that Planned Parenthood opens up its clinics is in low-income Title I communities, which are heavily black. The founder, Margaret Sanger, was a strong advocate of eugenics. So I mean, so what I'm seeing is slavery and genocide continuing, but in a more diplomatic, accepting way. So I'm really trying to persuade you that not to become a Republican, but to become a kingdom activist that can admit and not based on me. I'm a sinner, but based on the facts, because you know you're a Duke graduated academician that can think through this and look at the facts and say, well, what have the Democrats really done? And are we prophetically, okay, say you don't want to become Republican. As a prophet, right? This is Cornel West beef. Tavis Smiley is that black church is uncritical of Obama and the Democratic thing. Right. And he's scared. Right. Because he's saying this is not the tradition of the black church. Right. You know, that there's no critique on any thing. We don't critique them on. The president fights against school choice, and every single Caribbean and black parent I talk to wants school choice. Yeah. His daughters went to private school pre-presidency, during presidency, and they'll probably go post-presidency. Right. But yet he won't. But yet he's fighting in Washington D.C. and Louisiana, which the school choice that they have and the charter school program that are proving, and private school programs that now are being funded through voucher programs, based on the data. These charter schools are doing an incredible job as they're dealing with African Americans, low-income minorities, in intimate, specialized contextual environments. So, I mean, how do you respond to this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that either one party, you know, have done things perfectly. I mean, I think both need to be criticized, and we should hold both critical. I think overall, you know, obviously, you know, I think the Republican Party might be more akin to what we
struggle to say that.
I am. You know, I think the Republican Party, you know, for Christian conservatives, I think that obviously the Republican Party seems to speak more to their needs. Now, for others, I would say this. I would say that the Democratic Party has done more for blacks than the Republican Party. And I don't think it's just the thing about feeling. It's not just the thing about blacks have been duped. But I think, you know, if you look at historically, blacks seem to fare better under Democratic Party than it does under a Republican president. There's data to support that, and I think even fundamentally, the Democratic Party does seem to have this more social, not socialist, but more social idea in terms of having the government work to in some ways try to equal the playing field. Now, I do agree that the policies have not been it has not helped blacks. Even when we look at some of the things that have gone on, even while President Obama has been in office, while the unemployment rate continues to improve, we still see in the black community, minority community, it's improving at a much slower rate than it is for the majority. So I know it's not perfect, but I think socially blacks do seem to thrive better with Democrats.
National Review writes, even liberal black broadcaster Tavis Smiley, okay, has criticized Obama for this. As Smiley told Huffington Post Live, Eliano Minkovsky, sadly, and it pains me to say this, over the last decade, black folk in the era of Obama have lost ground in every major economic category. Smiley is almost completely correct based on the Obama administration's own latest available statistics. By the most basic economic performance metrics, with one key exception, black Americans are worse off now than when Obama was sworn in January 20th, 2009. The one bright spot is the unemployment rate for black Americans overall. That number from the Bureau of Labor Statistics has said from 12.7% when Obama was inaugurated to 8.8% last month, down by 30.7%. The unemployment rate for black teenagers also declined over the same period from 35.3% to 23.3%, down 34%. But most ominously, the seasonally adjusted labor force participation rate for black Americans across the board has slipped from 63.2% to 61.7%, down 2.4%. And then it goes on to say, during Obama's tenure, the percentage of black Americans struggling below the poverty line has advanced, according to most recent Census Bureau data, from 25.8 in 2009 to 26.2 in 2014, up 1.6%. Real median income among black households during those years, according to Census Bureau, sank from $35,954 per year to $35,398, down 1.5%. The number of black food stamp participants exploded across that time frame from almost 7.4 million to almost 12 million to the according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, up 58.2%. Also, from Obama's oath of office through the fourth quarter of 2015, the percentage of black Americans who own homes founded from 46.1% to 41.9%, according to the census. So, the blacks historically have only been helped by Democrats as Democrats spent more money through federal aid programs, public works. But the data shows, starting from Roosevelt, that they've always been paid less, even in those same public works, public contracts. And under Obama, they haven't been better.
Right.
And part of my argument that we're getting bamboozled is the only way we do better is with federal funding, whether it's grants, jobs, not by long-term sustainable profitable income, which is owning corporations, Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, and communities. So black people in South Florida that are able to buy a house are somehow tied in to Jackson, Miami-Dade School District, the police force, Border Patrol, some type of government county job. But yet we don't have any black capitalism, enterprise. So when the government has no money, or one day when it runs out of money, because we're in like the 10, 20 trillion dollars worth of debt, and it's increasing, we won't have any jobs. We won't even have the skills to compete as far as building homes, contracting work, technology work, innovation work. Doesn't that concern you? And that's what I'm saying. The democratic social philosophy is one of dependence on basic administrative, and one of the things that Thomas Sowell says is in the last 30 years, most of our PhDs are in the area of education. Well, everyone knows education. You're not making a lot of money. Mm-hmm. You're making good money, stable money, but we're not going to develop black capitalism and transform black urban cities by getting education degrees, divinity degrees, and areas involved in the humanities.
Right.
But we keep believing that lie, where I think the Republican philosophy is, no, you need to be competitive, you need to be innovative, you need to get the skills that the market needs, and this is not something that government can help you. Malcolm X said this, Black Islam has been saying this, the Black Panthers said this, there was black pastors, very few, that were railing against democratic social philosophy, that put always the emphasis on what the government has done for us. I'm arguing that the Republican idea that government can't do that much for you, in and of itself, is more virtuous, because it strengthens the family, strengthens the local church, and it strengthens the local micro context.
But I mean, I think in reality, I don't need either one of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party to tell me to be creative, innovative, and so forth. And I don't need them to legislate that for me, right? That's not what's at stake for us. I think far too often.
But the Democrats are creating regulations and burdens that makes it hard for innovation and capitalism to happen in the black community.
But not only that, but Jack, let's look at some of the failed policies of the Republican Party. Like with the economic depression that we've gone through, it is because of the lack of regulations that have allowed greedy people who are accustomed to acquiring wealth, for them to make those kinds of policies and make reckless decisions. The banks on mortgages. Who were some of the main victims of those? Those were the workers, the teachers, more the black folk. And that's because of the policy, the regulations that have been softened. And I think both parties should be criticized. I think it becomes a problem when we're putting all of our hope in these parties to really save us or really do something for our country. I think that the government has its role in making sure that it maintains order for the country and making sure that its citizens are taken care of. I think that's the role of the government. But beyond that, in order for us to really be engaged in our community, engaged in what happens, I think the responsibility kind of falls on us. And I know that there are certain parameters that are set for us by the government, but I do believe that while we operate and work within those parameters, that we'll be able to acquire the things that we need to acquire. There's no democratic legislation that says blacks, you cannot go in and study and study engineering and study the sciences. There's no Republican legislation that says that. There's neither one of those parties can say that, hey, we're the ones that's going to make sure that blacks have the opportunity to study these studies in order to advance. Neither one of them can say that.
Yeah, I think you're missing the point, which is this.
Okay.
The Democratic Party is beholden to unions. Unions ran in black urban communities.
Okay.
Black communities. Okay. Unions that run schools are poor performing.
Okay.
They're not allowing you as a taxpayer to choose what you want to do with your tax dollars, which is, I want to go put them in that private charter school that deals with programming, coding.
Right.
Okay. And the argument is the teachers won't have a job. Yes, they will. They'll end up working for charter schools and private schools. Okay. Every teacher I speak to hates these public, large city, metropolitan schools.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that the democratic principles that we as the government will educate your kids is working. So that's one idea. You're saying, the Republicans aren't stopping you from learning the skills to be competitive.
No, the Democrats aren't stopping.
And the Democrats, yes, they are. They're stopping people who want to have a choice in where they want to educate. That's number one. Number two, the Democrats. See, and let me just, before I say this, you're arguing that they've both done bad stuff and they've have failed policies. Yes, they have. what I'm saying, not so much about who has done bad things, but whose policies and ideas are more anti-Christian, anti-family, anti-freedom.
Right.
And I'm arguing based on data, real ideas. The idea that, like, ideas matter. There's a quantitative difference between a bad idea and a good idea. A bad idea that says, hey, I want to kill every white person. That's a bad idea.
Correct.
So if someone who promotes that, I would say, well, that's a bad idea versus, hey, I want to steal people's bubble gum. I would say, okay, that's not good, but it's definitely less harmful.
Right.
I would say based on the level of ideas that the Democratic Party has historically, since slavery, Jim Crow, and then, which is my second point, we talked about education. They are hurting the black community, and then they're killing our babies. They want to remove the Hyde Amendment, which says when Roe versus Wade was passed, the Hyde Amendment was established, says that federal funds can't be used for abortions.
All right.
They want to remove that, and they want to be able to abort all the way up into birth, which is they want to remove the partial birth ban. Right. Hillary Clinton wants to do that.
Right.
Most Democrats want to do that. And they've over 1 million black babies have been killed since 1973. So, on the second point, from education to abortion, now the question, people say, well, Republicans are racist. How can they be the racist party based on ideas? Not to say that there aren't individual Republicans who don't like black people.
Right.
I'm sure there is.
Right.
What I'm saying is that the
Democrats.
ideas are tangibly more racist in the sense that they are demoralizing and eliminating an entire race. And so, yes, the Democrats are, through policy and ideas, stopping blacks from getting the type of skills and even experiencing life, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They can't even come out the womb, and it's completely legislated, rationalized, like slavery, right before us. We have joined the anti-abolitionist party. And so the same type of matrix, people say, well, what was the cloud of deception that allowed people to somehow appease and facilitate the institution of slavery? Well, it's happening right now. Now, we can pick apart little secondary issues of the Republican Party, tax policy, this, that, but they're all secondary at the end of the day. When we talk about the primary, the main and the plain things, the Democratic Party is unequivocally, ontologically, inherently more evil in its ideas since the birth of the party and to the present.
I think the argument does stick from a Christian perspective, right? Because we can't.
We must see it from a Christian perspective.
Right.
That is the supreme philosophy and theology for us as Christians. And we believe that the way we see the world is the most beautiful, virtuous, and essential way to see the world.
Right.
If you don't see it from a Christian perspective, then you see it from a fleshly, worldly perspective, which in itself is an absurdity.
Right, but I think also then to conflate race with that, then it almost makes it sound, because what it sounds like, and I don't believe that that's what you're saying, that the Democratic Party, because of its policies, more so than the Republican Party, does more damage to the black community.
Yes, absolutely. But concretely.
That's what you're saying?
Absolutely.
You think, okay, based on the numbers. Now I have to go and take a look at the numbers.
They're aborting our babies.
Right, but
they want to do it all the way up to birth. Can you imagine?
But if a million black babies are dying,
8 months in the this is their idea. This is their platform.
Right, but if 1 million black babies are dying, how many more white babies are dying?
Very few.
Very few are dying?
70% of abortions are black and Latino.
Okay. I have to go and take a look at the numbers.
But let's say it was less.
Okay.
Let's say more white babies are dying. Let's say it's all white babies and very few.
Right. I think it's inherently evil. I think to kill and
that's just one issue. Then we can get into educational choice. We can get into their propagation of sexual ethics that is blatantly anti-family.
Right.
That is blatantly anti-Christian.
Right.
And has spiritual consequences. If we believe in a theistic worldview that God is intimately involved with nations, he's definitely getting angry.
Yeah, but Jack, it almost sounds as if the Republican Party is a Christian party, and
no, it's not. No, I'm not saying it. No, I'm not saying they're a Christian party. I'm saying they're more Christian influenced. That's what I'm saying. Obviously, we're not a Christian nation.
No,
they're not a Christian party. But but when we weigh philosophically best options, you're always going with the option that's more sympathetic and celebrative of natural, universal ethics of morality. Our Christian social ethic is not just for Christians. Lockean philosophy taught all the framers that. John Locke taught that natural law is always compatible and parallel to the essential Christian teachings, especially wrapped up in the social ethics of Torah and the New Testament.
Right.
Remember, Paul said the law is summed up in love, and love is really the summary of the law.
Right.
And that's why the whole Declaration of Independence, it says, look, our rights come from our Creator. At the end of the Declaration of Independence, it says that we will stand before the supreme judge of the earth. So they definitely saw rights and responsibilities and limits of freedom coming from our Creator.
Right.
So yes, from a Christian perspective, I'm not saying the Republican Party is Christian. I'm saying that they have more Christian influence, and they've been birthed in ethics of freedom and justice, and they've maintained it more. Have they done mistakes? Are some Republicans racist from the South? Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
But on the level of ideas, what's your last thoughts in response to that?
But I say this. I say that what we have is not. I don't think for us that's with the two parties. That for me isn't
But
it.
if you have no choice, which one do you choose?
If I have no choice, which one do I choose?
Based on a Christian mind.
I mean, obviously, when it comes to the issues of abortion, when it comes to the issues of marriage, Republican Party, for me, champions that.
Okay.
But then when it comes also more to more of the social,
Which have done more harm. Have not elevated blacks out of poverty.
I think Democrats are more socially
Give me some proof.
of what they have done.
Yeah, what they have done for blacks and poor to get them out of poverty.
Based on Scholarly Strategy Network, this article here, it says that economic outcomes clearly diverge under Democratic versus Republican presidents, especially for African Americans. Under Democratic president, black families' income grew on average $895 annually.
How much?
$895.
$895. So we're in the 35,000 range.
But grew only by $142 under
Okay.
Republicans.
So look how low the bar is. Chinese Asians come here.
Right.
Okay. Many of them not even citizens.
But it's even lower under Republicans.
Hold on.
Okay.
The whole basis is the fact that they spend federal aid and they create dependency that keeps us in poverty. For the average black household to have an income of $35,000,
Right.
we're straddling the poverty line.
Right.
Asians come here, and they have the highest GDP. The average household of an Asian home is somewhere, I think, $55,000 to $60,000.
Right.
What I'm saying is Asians have no political power.
But they tend to also go with Democrat as well.
No, they don't.
Asians?
Asians are very conservative. Asians are very conservative, and
I believe Asians and Hispanics are mainly Democrat.
No.
Have a few towards Democrat.
No, not Asians. Asians are very free market, conservative. But the point of it is, even with that, the point of it is this: their wealth comes through no government aid.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from free market principles, innovation. They tend to move into the math and the sciences.
Okay.
And they have strong families, which is what Republicans are saying. The Republicans are saying you can't have sustainable economic growth in communities with creating federal dependency. There's only so much government can do. Government's like referees in a basketball game. They can create regulation. And even like with the bank failures. Well, first of all, banks love Democrats because they bail. That's who's bailing them. That's a whole different issue. But it's not like the banks are antagonistic towards Democrats. Okay, you talk about the banks and what they did with the mortgage crisis.
Right.
The point of it is this, that Asians, without any government intervention, are doing better. And what we're saying is that the philosophy of one party is more aligned with Scripture, meaning there's only so much government can do.
There is. I agree. I completely agree.
But yet, the Democrats' argument is when they come around every 4 years in the black church, is vote for me and I'm going to make things better. But they haven't made things better. Things fluctuate between $800 more. But we're still in the low income gap with no real GDP growth for 70, 80 years. Because we're not being educated,
right,
and we don't have educational choice, which is a policy situation.
Right. You know what? I think this. I think that, I'll sit here and kind of look for arguments for both. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, civic engagement, civic duty kind of falls on us where we're at on our local level. I think what we want to do is, we want to make the best decision as it relates to our Christian identity in terms of who we elect. And then I think we go one step further, not just listen to someone and vote and then kind of go back into our homes until the next 4 years. But I think it is all incumbent on us to keep them honest, to keep them.
Absolutely.
And the
church the kingdom needs to be critical of Republicans.
At both sides, right.
But we need to be, there is no criticism from hardly any black clergy that align themselves with Democratic Party towards the Democratic Party.
No, there is criticism.
Very few. Tavis Smiley and Cornell, for the last 8 years,
right,
have been the only blacks from the Democratic platform,
right,
or part of the party,
right,
that have been critical.
Right.
I've not heard a black scholar. I haven't heard any major religious leader. I haven't heard anyone from the AME Church, the National Baptist Church,
right,
critique anything that the president, the party, whether it's family policy, whether it's their pushback on religious organizations, hospitals, forcing them with the abortion mandates, which Obama promised he wouldn't do. They have not critiqued prices on Obamacare. There's been no pushback on schools. You don't hear anything critical of unions. Even though on a ground level, people are frustrated, they're afraid to voice their opinion as a kingdom citizen who has one allegiance, that's to the Word of God, because they're afraid of what's going to happen socially with their church members and the black community. And so that's, for me, even more scarier.
Right.
Because that's Nazi Germany.
Right.
When the average German was afraid to be critical of Hitler, and we need to be critical Republicans.
Right.
But we also need to weigh the fact that the immorality of the Democratic Party is weighty. And we need to at least consider that. Man, this has been great.
Yeah.
Sorry I couldn't convince you in the last 20, 30 minutes. But I appreciate your arguments. I do take them seriously.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, I have no problem with repenting and apologizing. I'm trying to work through all this. Because as I'm here in Miami and I was working in LA, I'm seeing the same issues. When I went to Detroit, when I went through Oakland, I'm seeing the same issues.
Yeah.
A way of thinking, a way of politicking on a local level.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the same type of commissioners. You watch the movie The Wire.
Yeah.
Okay, the commissioners, the reverends in Baltimore.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the same stuff here in Miami.
Yeah.
They're bought. They leverage their voice.
Right.
They get paid. They get taken care of. They become quiet. I don't see anyone talking about we need corporations, Fortune 500, manufacturing and distribution. No one mentions anything that we know will lead to long-term, sustainable, profitable growth. All the corporations are down south.
Yeah.
They're in Latino communities. They're in Jewish communities. They're in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But no, I don't see no black pastor, preacher, commissioners advocating for economic, business, sustainable growth and the type of skill sets we need to have Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 1000 companies compete with Silicon Valley and it be black ran. Booker T. Washington argued for that.
Right.
He said black enterprise and family has to be the first priority and then third political activism. W.E.B. Du Bois said no political activism. NAACP jumped on that. And that's really been what our strength has been. But we've been doing that for 70, 80, 90 years, even as the black family and black enterprise is diminishing.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I certainly agree. I think we need to do a better job in holding these people accountable, and even for us, do a better job in more civic engagement. Voting is not just enough, but we also have to be out there, criticizing and offering solutions to the problems in our community. We have the source, through Christ, and we certainly believe that the earth is the
strengthening
Lord.
black families.
Yeah.
Fathers are the most critical variable in all this.
Yeah,
When there's a father and a mother in the home,
right.
whether it's black, Asian, Latino, and he's pushing and he's challenging and he's loving mom and dad, that's where we've lost it. We've allowed immorality to pervade the community. We've been soft on family responsibility, right?
Right.
The best of our leadership has left our communities with integration.
Yeah.
We've left a vacuum of leadership.
Yeah.
But I believe the most essential foundation to everything we're talking about here, which again is a conservative message, family, family, family. Whatever you're doing, Commissioner, and that's why you can have a black family in Liberty City where the kids are getting math awards, are getting science scholarships to Harvard and Princeton, and they're completely an island, but there's the same principles at work there. Strong mom and dad, they go to church,
Yeah.
they push their kids in disciplines, because not everyone's going to be the next football star or the next Lil Wayne, which is what we emphasize.
Right.
And we've been duped by that, and basically they're being taught by dad that's saying, no, you're going to have to develop your skills, be competitive, go into this, use the same type of principles of stewardship and profit making that Asians have to do, Latinos have to do. And I believe that type of rhetoric, that type of philosophy is what's going to transform our community. So God bless you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man.
Okay.